So funny enough, I flew to Shanghai for a fight. My fight was the fight date was September 2017. And one of my college buddies who wrestled with me, he actually lived in Australia. And so he would come to a lot of my fights over there in Asia, and he went to this specific one. And he sat down and he started telling me Bitcoin. And I'm like, sweet, how do I buy some? Like right away. I had been a Ron Paul fan for years. I had wrote him in for the presidential election a couple times. I've been a hard money advocate, so I had read about that. I knew about the issues of the Federal Reserve because I read his, a couple of his books. And so as soon as my buddy, his name's Rye, as soon as Rye started telling me about Bitcoin, it just clicked. It was like, oh, wow, how do I get it on that? And now obviously I wish someone would have told me prior to that. And at that point, I could buy, I think it was like $4,000 a week of stuff that I was able to buy. And that was it on Coinbase and it took me a while. And then you got to sign up and you got to get approved and all this other stuff. And so, I put quite a bit of money into it that fall of 2017. And unfortunately, I didn't put it all into Bitcoin. There was a bunch of shit coins that I bought, a handful of which went to zero. And I watched the rise. I watched the fall. I sold nothing. I was in for the long haul because I just saw it as the future of money. Now we're, 4-ish year. We're probably almost exactly 4 years later to the day when I bought my first Bitcoins. And I still think it's the future of money. I'm more invested than ever. And I love it.
That's amazing. So you're like a full cycle hodler.
I'm a full cycle 4 years now. Yeah. So I've been, honestly, 90% of my first journey was the downside because I got to watch the fun ride up in September, October, November, December. So, I got 4 months of a fun ride, and then boom, right after December, it kind of starts crashing. And so most of the time I was watching was the downside, but I kept reading books, and I probably read 10 or 12 Bitcoin books right now. Actually, we just interviewed on my Funky Crypto show. We just interviewed VJ, who wrote this book, the Bullish Course for Bitcoin. That was a really fun interview. And so now, I just kept reading on it. And then in 2019 in October, I talked to my buddy John Kim, he's a Bitcoiner. He's also a Litecoin guy, which most people probably know him as. And I said, most of my audience doesn't know about Bitcoin. Let's start a Bitcoin podcast. Why not? And so we started a Bitcoin podcast, and now we've been, that was October of 2019. So we've been rocking for like a year and a half. I think we've done close to 100 shows now. We've got to interview most of the biggest names in the crypto space.
So I want to talk about, because your introduction to Bitcoin was interesting because you said you already recognized problems with the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
Talk more about that. What problems did you see then that Bitcoin solves? And then maybe we can get into what you think it's doing now.
Yeah. So I guess the big one was that I read Ron Paul stuff. And so, he's an audit the Fed and end the Fed guy, right? I mean, I think I went to Ron Paul rally and shit, and the Fed. And there's just so many issues with the Federal Reserve. It's not transparent in any way, shape, or form. And then, as we've obviously seen, probably more than ever in the last year and a half, they can just do whatever the hell they want. They can print as much money as they want. They can fully debase the currency. And most Americans don't recognize this because, high level inflation hasn't happened for any of our lifetimes, really. Whereas if you're in Venezuela or a lot of other places, you recognize the terrible effects of inflation. You see those, and it's an issue. And most Americans don't recognize that that's even a possibility at this point. I think they're probably going to start recognizing it in the course of the next 6 months to a year. I think we're going to see it probably happen here. But that's going to wreak a lot of bad effects. So, yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I was kind of already programmed to think that way from reading Ron Paul stuff. And when it was, Michael Saylor, I think Michael Saylor's, one of the things he says is like, well, who would you rather trust with your money, the politicians or the engineers? And like, that ain't even a question. It's the engineers, obviously. And Bitcoin is engineered money. It's coming out in a very specific manner. It's continued to do so for the last 12 plus years. I don't trust the politicians. I think if you like could pick the most trustworthy profession, politician would be like just about as low down the list as you could get.
Yeah, I hear you there. Well, that is interesting. Like, so what do you see in your own profession or your career? Obviously, you're not active MMA fighting anymore, but did you see maybe Bitcoin or some of the lessons that you learned from all of those books? Is any of that stuff applicable to you as an athlete? I know for me, it kind of changed my mindset of work in general, getting into it. So did it affect your journey in
Yeah.
any way?
No, I would say no on that. But did it affect my mindset on life and savings and investing and how everything works? And the answer to that is absolutely. I actually we just did that interview with VJ, and but one of the books that came up in there, because VJ brought up how it kind of like changes your moral compass to a certain extent and how you think about money, is Thank God for Bitcoin by Jimmy Song. And that kind of talks about the moral case for Bitcoin and why the monetary policy in America kind of, it's against the savers, right? I mean, what we would really want out of our money is to be able to work hard, to be able to save our money. And then when we retire, our saved money is worth what it's worth, right? Or more. It's not worth less. And what VJ was talking about, and Jimmy talked about this also, is because we know the money is not going to hold its value. Regular everyday people are forced to gamble on stocks and everything else because they know their money is not going to hold their value. And I would just really recommend people read that. Thank God for Bitcoin. It's a moral case, and I think it has definitely changed the way I have thought about money, saving, and my future.
So what's your vision for the upside of Bitcoin? Like in terms of how will this affect society as a whole? Apart from like the ability to save, I kind of see it as just a very foundational building block that we can build, kind of a more honest, you talked about the problem with politicians, a more honest foundation.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
If we want to just go into other things, the ability to, and I was saying in the podcast I just did, talk about how most people they don't believe this. They you tell them that if they're not a Bitcoin, like no way. It's that I can send money to anyone, and my money is not confiscatable. I mean, I lost my device in a boating accident. I have no access to it. I don't remember the password. How are you going to take my Bitcoin? You're not. You can't. You literally can't. I lost it. There's no access to it. And listen, if I want to send money to you, I can send money to you directly on the Bitcoin network, and there is no government that can stop that transaction. And so people don't understand that. And also, inflation, America hasn't really experienced a hard inflation. Most Americans have not really had to deal with the issue of the government censoring their transactions, and or sending money out. So also the show, and Charlie Lee's talked about this, but Charlie Lee's dad wanted to leave China and he wanted to get his money out of China. He literally left China on a boat with gold taped to his body. And if they found him, they were going to kill him, because there was no other way to send it. And, right now with the banking system, it's like in a lot of countries, there's capital controls. You can't send your money out of the country and just decide to have a better life other places. Whereas Bitcoin, again, I can lose the physical device, but if I can remember my seed words, I can go buy a new device and I can restore my Bitcoin wallet whenever I get to the new place. It is unconfiscatable. It is easily portable. There's so many really good cases for Bitcoin, and the more and more authoritarian our governments become, and obviously some of them were already more authoritarian, but now you're watching shit go down in 2021, like Australia, and you're like, good God, I didn't know they were authoritarian. Like, oh my gosh. You're watching stuff like that happen. You're like, okay, if I am a wise person and I'm paying attention, I am seeing more and more necessity of being able to free myself from the dictatorships that are around me.
Right. And as a result, I mean, we've got plenty of cases happening now where it's just probably a better idea to take some responsibility for your own property. In
Well,
that
I mean,
realm,
our own property. That's another thing. Most Americans don't realize, like, okay, if 100 people got their money stored at the bank down the street and all 100 go to get their money is not there. Their money it's not there. They lend it out at a rate 20-1. If you all want your money back, you're not getting your money back because it doesn't exist. It's not there. Whereas if I have my Bitcoin on my wallet, my Bitcoin are in my wallet, right? That's where they are. There's no one else holding that for me. That is my personal responsibility to hold that Bitcoin, but I know it's there. I know there's nowhere else that it is. So I have the ability to hold my personal assets without anyone else. I can do it myself in a safe manner.
so how long did it take you from when you got into Bitcoin to realize the benefits of self-custodying your wealth?
I think my friend recommended that almost immediately. I don't want to say I was in Shanghai, so I obviously didn't buy one in Shanghai, right? But I think it was relatively quickly after. He's like, as soon as you go home, get a Tracer, and then you can self custody. So I think he was pretty wise to that. He did. I give him a hard time because he got me started in Bitcoin, but he also told me to buy a bunch of shit coins that went to zero. So I'm obviously thankful for his guidance in the beginning.
So what are your thoughts on Bitcoin derivatives? Are you a futures guy? Do you do options contracts? Jason got you doing all that or not?
So I don't. We had Dan Held on the podcast. He introduced me to some of those. I got interested. I looked into it a little bit, and then I decided not to do it, not to do any at all. And just I buy and I hold, and that's it. I don't trade. I don't speculate. I just buy and I hold, and that's all I've ever done. Because I think it's going to be the greatest store of value humans have ever created.
Solid strategy. How about mining? We got any Midwest mining operations popping up anytime soon?
No mining. But I just don't have. I feel like I didn't have the technical acumen in the beginning for the mining or running a node. And I know some people say, hey, this is actually really, really easy to do. And it's like, I appreciate that other people are doing it. I just at that point didn't feel the need to get into it. That's not saying I'm never going to feel the need. That was just saying I didn't feel the need at that point in time.
Oh, gotcha. Have you been following any of the Lightning projects, or just running a Lightning node or a Bitcoin node at all? Is that something that interests you, is on your radar?
I understand what the Lightning Network does. I think it's really valuable. I think it's great. I do not run a Lightning node. If someone made a really good argument why I should, I would probably go look into it. I haven't had anyone make that argument to me yet, but I'm open to the idea if it was, if it's the right situation.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that leads me to El Salvador. What are your thoughts? Are you gonna go to Bitcoin Beach at some point, or what?
It's great. I mean, we needed someone to start, right? Someone always has to be first. And I'm hoping that that is a domino. And obviously now we've seen Cuba last week. I believe we saw Paraguay kind of announce some stuff, and hopefully the dominoes just keep falling. And listen, I am hoping that we don't get to a point in this world where we need some type of Bitcoin citadel and we all need to go to a singular place to ensure our freedoms are upheld. But hey, at least we have a couple of those places now if we need to.
Yeah, there you go. So what does that mean in terms of at home protecting some of our freedoms? Are you interested in this infrastructure bill conversation, the sort of rumblings of regulating Bitcoin?
Yeah.
In the House?
Yeah, I listened to our podcast co-host Jason Williams. He's great. He knows a lot more about this. I listened to him talk about it a little bit. It's a little bit above my head. I kind of grasp the larger nature of it. And I'm under the assumption right now that it will just get figured out. They're obviously, we talked about politicians, they're untrustworthy, and there's also a lot of them who are semi-incompetent. But Bitcoin is, it's getting to be $1 trillion asset, and they're going to figure it out, and they'll probably do right by it. That's not saying they're not going to F up at all in the interim, right? They might F up a couple of times, but they'll probably get it right. And if they somehow don't get it right, then obviously a lot of the infrastructure will go to another country who is going to get it right. Someone's going to get it right. China obviously got it wrong. I hope America doesn't get it wrong, because if they do, it's going to go somewhere else, right? It's I think what we've seen now. I really laugh because before the China mining ban, one of the big things that people picked at was too much of the mining is centralized in China. It's not really decentralized because all the mining's over there. And then China bans the mining, and they legit ban, right? Legit. They've done it other times in history where it's not been legitimately banned it. And we've seen this bounce back of hash rate, like a V-shaped recovery. Like it's like boom, like that. And I think it speaks just a lot to the strength of the network of how fast that's bouncing back.
Yeah, it's been amazing to watch. I mean, it really holds true that like so far, every big attack on Bitcoin seems to just make it stronger. We're kind of stealing like the value of other traditional assets that people ran to for safety from the US dollar.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I guess that leaves me, where do you see the market going? Like, do you have an end of year price prediction? Are you a charts guy at all?
I watch a couple guys. Smart people. I always feel like smart people, they don't have to be experts at everything. They can have like a basic understanding, and then they just follow smarter people than themselves, right? And if they can recognize who's smarter than themselves, then it will usually turn out pretty well. So I always just say pretty much everyone that's smart that I follow says it's going to be over six figures. So I'm going to go with over six figures. How much over? I'm not really sure, but that seems like that's what's going to happen. Man, I don't think there's anyone smart who's predicting less.
It's a good point.
Yeah, I'm really
So
fascinated. Like, not that I'm an expert, but I'm fascinated. I love numbers and math. Um, the on-chain metrics stuff that they're putting out to me is really fascinating. Now, I'm not an expert. I haven't dug deep, but I follow Will Clemente is one guy, Willie Woo's another guy, and just like the way that it's a completely transparent system essentially, right? And the way that stuff can be tracked, and they know who's buying, who's selling, all that stuff. It's a really fascinating thing, and obviously those charts are all pointing to the fact that it's going to go up.
yeah, does your hodling include smash buying when you see opportunities based on the news, or do you just kind of dollar cost average even look at that?
So I smash bought March 14, 2020, with a lot of stuff. I just said, hey, we're never ever gonna get a deal as good as this. This is the best deal ever, right? So I bought a bunch of Bitcoin and Ethereum. So obviously I came into some money earlier this year when I had the boxing match. I bought quite a bit after that because it was just like, well, and thankfully it had went down a little bit, but I bought it at like 50-ish, maybe a little bit under. But right before that, right, it was up to 65. Now I think it's going to go above 65, and I'm not selling, so I wouldn't really have lost any money. But then you buy it at 50 and it goes on 30. You're like, damn it, why didn't I just, why didn't the fight happen a couple weeks later? Or why didn't it crash up? And I could have bought more Bitcoin, right? So I have smash bought a few times, and I dollar cost average a little bit, not a ton compared to what my total supply is.
Yeah, so that brings me to do you prefer, like, if you had events or an athletic event of speaking events in the future, would you prefer to get paid in US dollars or Bitcoin? Because do you like to just have dry powder waiting around to smash buy, or you want to get your life kind of on a Bitcoin standard? Like, where are you at with that stuff?
Yeah, I think the Bitcoin standard's hard because I do have a lot of my net worth in Bitcoin, and even larger in some type of cryptocurrency. And so it's like, well, I do still have everyday bills that I have to pay. So, and then when I see the opportunity, I can buy more Bitcoin. So I'll tell you, like on my podcast, we've got paid in Bitcoin for the last year, and it's really cool. Like looking back at the transfers over the course of time of like what in dollar terms, what it was in Bitcoin, like in the earlier months, say, I think I want to say it started like August of last year or something. It's like, well, Bitcoin was $9,000 or whatever. So in Bitcoin terms, the dollar amount was the same. What I got paid that month in the dollar amount versus what I got paid in July of this year, same dollar amount, right? But in Bitcoin terms, it's significantly different. So that's kind of funny to watch. But so I have taken some things in Bitcoin, but I would definitely, and if someone offered it to me like for a one-time thing, but as my main salary, I still need to get paid in dollars, unfortunately.
Do you have any books or things that you're following now, or kind of resources you'd recommend to people who are getting into the space?
Well, the two people I follow that I really like on price action would be Nicholas Merton on Data Dash. I follow him, and then I follow Scott Melker on Twitter. I really like both of those guys. And man, books. That's why I tell people, it's like, I don't want you to buy Bitcoin on my recommendation. I don't want that weight on my shoulders. And I think it's a good idea. I recommend you do it. I want you to read the damn books. So you buy it for your own purposes, not because I just, and then when it goes down, you say, Ben, you told me to buy Bitcoin. Shut up. I told you, no, I told you to read the damn books. What I told you to do. So man, there's a lot of good ones out right now. Bitcoin Standards, where I would start with people. Bullish Case for Bitcoin, easy read, covers a lot of the questions. Thank God for Bitcoin. I really love that one. Bitcoin, Hard Money You Can't F With. That's my co-host, Jason Williams. It's a really engaging book. So, those are all like, all four of those books, you could probably read, let's say like 8 to 10 hours of reading total, and it's like, so 8 to 10 hours of reading to change, to literally, I think, change your life, right? To change the way you think about money, to change the way you think about value. Freaking do it. Stop being lazy. Read the effing books.
Definitely agree with you there. I hear you there. So do you try to convert people in your life, or just
Absolutely.
You podcast and you go all in?
No, absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely try to convert people all the time. It's funny. I would say, like last year, I had one person buy under the all-time high of $20,000. I had one person who bought when I recommended right away in March when the crash happened. They got like a $4,500 Bitcoin or something to that effect ish. But I had so many people buy after it hit the all-time high. I had a lot of people buy, like, they got excited, went past 20. I think they bought, a lot of people bought it like 25 or 30. But again, I don't want you to buy because I recommend you to buy. I want to try to open your eyes, and then I want you to go do the reading and you to figure it out for you. Because for me, I understand why I'm buying Bitcoin. I get it for myself. And if it went to zero, I would still think I did the right thing. Maybe there's some extraneous effects that made it go to zero. And listen, I think it's like a 0.001% chance. It's still possible. But I would understand why I did it. I would understand why I spent all my money. And I want someone else who's buying it to understand that thing too. I want them to understand what they're getting into. And so that way, when the price fluctuation does happen, you don't get all scared. You don't sell, because those on-chain metrics charts that Willie Woon and Will Clementi I was talking about, all the people who sold in the last drop down were all the new buyers because they didn't understand it. They got into it because they saw price go up. The price didn't go up. They sold. They lost their money. If they just hold on for long enough, there's no one on planet Earth who has held on for 4 years. And my 4-year anniversary, I think it's probably somewhere right around this date, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe a little bit later. I don't remember the exact, like, how long it took me to get verified or whatever. No one who's held on for 4 years has ever lost money. Not one person. Yeah. If you've held it for 4 years, you have not lost money. Not one person ever who's bought a Bitcoin and held it for 4 years has lost money.
So it sounds like you're a big advocate of kind of like your conviction determining your allocation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I hear you there. So the real anniversary is, how long has it been since you sold Bitcoin?
I've never sold.
Awesome.
Ever. I haven't sold one. I haven't sold 0.00. I haven't sold a Satoshi ever.
Amazing. Well, I don't know. I don't think most people can say that. That's awesome that you realize the value of it.
Yes, sir.
In the MMA world, about fighters being underpaid. I used to be at Jackson Wink, and I was a huge advocate there of getting fighters contracts that included Bitcoin and getting their, because athletes are getting large chunks of money kind of infrequently, and it's kind of overwhelming. You don't know what to do with all this money.
And most of them have no education on the subject also.
No financial education. So one, how do we fix that? Two, like, how can Bitcoin help facilitate that, because I think it itself incentivizes good financial habits.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you just kind of nailed it right there, is that once you understand Bitcoin, it's going to give you a much better understanding of finance. It's going to give you a much better understanding of what your future should look like. It's going to give you a much better understanding of saving. So it's going to do all those things for you. If you really read and you really understand, it's going to do those things for you. And most fighters, to your point, don't have a financial education. I mean, it's not just fighters. This is a lot of pro athletes, right? No financial education. The statistics on professional athletes going broke years after competing is very, very high. So I think it's not good just for fighters. I think it's good for all professional athletes. Oh, I think it's shit. I think it's good for everybody. But yes, to your point, fighters and professional athletes are very specific that they need this bad.
Agreed. Well, is there any last thoughts you have for the Bitcoin community or for people just getting in? Any last advice before we let you go here?
No, I think that was good. I think we talked about it all. Matt, I told you I missed Bitcoin convention 2021. I'm really looking forward to 2022. I asked you the date. I already put it on my calendar. I really blew it this year, but I will be there next year. Yep.